Letter number 14 of Letters from Hell. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Letters from Hell by Valdemar Adolph Thisted. Letter 14. I revert to my childhood. It was the eve of Aunt Betty's birthday. My present had been waiting for ever so long. I gloated over it in secret with distracted feelings. I would not for worlds have betrayed it prematurely, yet I longed to let her guess at the wonderful surprise in store for her. Thus divided in my childish mind, I sought her little room in the twilight. She was not there, and I grew impatient. I must needs look for something to amuse me, but there was nothing that owned the charm of novelty. I gazed about, yawning, when a large moth on the window caught my eye. That called me to action, and, forgetful of Aunt Betty's pious injunctions to leave God's creatures unmolested, I forthwith set up a chase. Nor was it long before I had caught the hapless insect. It fluttered anxiously, but I held it fast, bent upon examining it, when suddenly Aunt Betty entered. Overtaken in my boyish cruelty, I closed my hand upon the little prisoner, and stood trembling. Aunt Betty, however, did not seem to notice that I was ill at ease, and turned to me with her usual kindness. I felt very miserable, and conversation would not flow, so she told me a story, her usual device when she thought I needed rousing. Now, whatever her stories might be worth, and they were not by any means always inventions of genius, they were sure to culminate in some sort of moral which never failed to impress me. Aunt Betty's story on this occasion led up to the statement, "God seeth thee." The words fell on me like judgment. Involuntarily, I hid my hand behind my back, my heart beating, ready to burst. "You must know, darling," Aunt Betty went on unconsciously, "that God sits upon his holy throne, an angel on his right hand, and another on his left, each having a book before him, and the angel to the right marks down all the good, however little or weak, which man strives to do while he lives on earth. That angel is always smiling a heavenly smile. But the angel on the left is full of weeping, as he notes down the evil deeds of men. And at the last day, when the great reckoning has come, a voice is heard from the throne, 'Give up the books.' And then our deeds are examined. If there is more evil than good, and we have not repented of it humbly, and received forgiveness of sin, it will go ill with us. We shall be forever wailing in the evil place." This ending of Auntie's story troubled me greatly. I pressed my hand together, closer and closer, feeling at the same time as though a live coal were burning my palm. It was conscience which burned. The poor moth must have been dead long before, yet I felt as though it was still fluttering within my grasp, trying to free itself from the unkind hold. "God seeth all things," said Auntie, "and we must answer to him for all our deeds at the last day." Self-control was at an end. A flood of tears came to the rescue, and, unable to say a single word, I held out my palm to Aunt Betty, the crushed moth witnessing against me. She understood at once, and, drawing me to her heart, she first pointed to the wrong of cruelty, but added her own sweet words of consolation, that God would forgive me if my tears could tell him I was sorry. But I was not able at once to grasp this assurance, sobbing piteously. Never was there anything more tender, more full of love than Aunt Betty's ways when comfort was needed, and presently she made me kneel down and ask God to forgive me. It was she who prayed, I repeating the words after her, but they came from my heart, and never was there more sincere repentance. And then she told me another story, and that story, too, must have its moral. Pressing me close to her heart, she exhorted me to look to God in all my doings, and turn to him in prayer my life long. Whenever I had done anything amiss, I should tell him so with a contrite heart, begging him to forgive me, and promising him sincerely that I would try not to do so again. Then the Lord would pity me in his mercy, and I need not fear the dreadful book. As for the poor moth, we buried it sorrowfully in one of Auntie's flower pots. We gave it a coffin of rose leaves, so that the mangled corpse need not be touched by the covering earth. My heart was light again when I left the little room, but all that night I was troubled in dreams. Again and again I heard the dreadful words, "Give up the books," and, waking, I sat up in bed to find myself in the dark. I had never known before what it was to be afraid of the dark. Now I knew. The following morning, as soon as I was dressed, I ran to Aunt Betty's door, finding it locked contrary to habit. "It is me, Auntie," I cried, and was admitted directly. But I stood still, amazed. The tears ran down Aunt Betty's face. On the table before her there was the most marvelous array of queer old things which I did not remember ever having seen. Indeed, such was an amazement, and, I must add, my grief, that I forget all about the precious present I had come to deliver. My first clear idea was that Aunt Betty too perchance might have crushed a moth, but a brighter thought supervened. "Auntie," I whispered, pressing close to her, "didn't you say last night that God seeth all things? Does he see you are crying?" Aunt Betty stared, a flood of light illuminating her features. "Yes, darling," she said. "Thank you. He does know all things and he knows my tears. It is very wrong of me to forget it. He does not only know them, but he counts them." And quickly she dried them, showing me her own old smiling face. "Can you not see, my child, how the Lord has wiped them away? He needs but look upon poor human eyes, and they cease crying." "But why did you cry, Auntie?" "That is more than you could understand, dearie. I am 40 years old this day. But why need I cry? Why should I, even if I were an old maid of 60 or 80? And if he will have me live till I am 100, I will not murmur. Come and sit down by me, that I may talk to you." And she began. "Years ago, my child, there was a young girl as pretty as she was foolish. She believed the world to be indescribably beautiful, and that all its glories were waiting to be showed into her lap. There was no harm in this illusion in itself, but it was hurtful because altogether untrue. The world is not meant to be so delightful to any of us. The girl herself was really pretty, and when people told her so, she would cast down her eyes, feeling as though she must sink into the ground for shyness. There was one especially who told her so times without number. And he was beautiful without doubt, strong, manly, and winning. He was a sailor. It was a time of war, and he commanded a privateer. She loved him dearly with all her heart. There was a ball one day. Do you know what a ball is? It is a queer thing, a mixture of angelic delight and devilish invention. One is carried along, floating, as it were, in the airy spaces between heaven and earth and hell. At least I think so. Well, when the ball was over he entreated her for one of her gloves. There was nothing she could have refused him at that moment, I believe. He had it, and here you see its fellow. And she showed me number one of her relics, an ancient kid glove. But the young girl's parents said he was an adventurer and not fit to marry into a respectable family. That was her first grief. Still, he had her heart. She said she would never love another, and they were permitted, at last, to be engaged to one another. This is the ring he gave her. Now she swam in happiness. One voice only in all the universe had power over her heart, and that voice was his. It might have been true that he was not without many and grave faults, but she loved him just as he was. He might have sunk lower and lower, I believe she would have loved him still, for once the heart has been given away truly, but that is more than you can understand. Well, he went to sea and returned. It was a splendid vessel which he commanded. The Viking, they called it. One capture after another he made, and grew rich upon the prizes taken. But people said money never remained with him. He was careless of it, and prone to gambling. This is the ship. She showed me a little picture representing a schooner skimming over the bluest of seas. His absence sometimes was long, but they exchanged letters whenever opportunity offered. Such letters! All her soul was in hers. And as for his, well, here they are. She pointed to a packet of faded letters, carefully tied together with a once rose-colored ribbon. And then there came a time when news ceased. What she felt and suffered in those sad days I cannot tell you. At last she heard again. He was ill, the letter said. Very ill in a foreign seaport. Winter was approaching, but she would not be deterred. Taking her trusted maid with her, she set out upon the journey and found him in misery. He had been wounded in a duel. What that is you need not know. But here is the bullet. She nursed him, and he recovered. She freed him from his liabilities, paying all his debts. Full of contrition, and with a new heart apparently, he returned with her. His promises satisfied her and her family. He would give up privateering, and take the command of a merchantman instead. She should go with him, as his wife. Once more they were to separate, and then be united for life. He went to visit his relations, and settle his affairs. The weeks passed. The wedding day approached. Happy hour that should crown her hopes, heal her griefs, and reward her for all her past sufferings. The wedding dress was ready. This is the wreath. Do you know the bridal blossoms? Poor wreath. It is faded now and shriveled. But it will last, I think, while 2 eyes are left to look upon it fondly, for the sake of the love that came and went. There was another letter. He had set out again to join her, but turned halfway, never to see her again. Here's the saddest of letters. What tears it cost her, what pangs, to answer it. Was he wicked? I do not think so, but very heedless. He had surrounded himself with difficulties, and there was but one way out of them. One heart must be broken. His uncle, who adopted him, had a daughter, God bless her. He engaged himself twice over. Men, I fear, can do such things. He could redeem his pledge to one only. He did his duty by her, who perhaps had suffered most for him, and who, but let that pass. They say that he settled down and made her a good husband. I trust the Lord has forgiven him the sins of his youth. But for that other one, who gladly would have sacrificed her all for his sake, happiness was dead and gone, her beauty fading with her hopes. She grew old, and people began to find her plain. She had nothing left to live for, in herself I mean, so she lived for others. The world is bad, but men need sympathy. They are not all that bad, but many are unhappy, suffering, and poor. The old maid has found comfort in God, her Lord and Saviour. She stopped and carefully set herself to pack up her treasures. And that accomplished, she turned to me smiling. I have done for a year, she said. Let us think of breakfast now. I, of course, had not taken in the meaning of her story, nor was there any need. She had felt the longing to unburden herself to human ears. She had done so, but her secret was hers. Now I remember her words. Understanding them as I did not then, I am able to enter into her feelings now. Those feelings of her 40th birthday, when she, the so-called old maid, poured out her heart to the child. At dinner, Aunt Betty appeared unusually gay, making the funniest little speeches and keeping us in the best of humor all that day. But those words of hers, God seeth thee, would return to me often, even in latter years. They had been words of comfort to my pious old aunt. To me they sounded as the trumpets of judgment. So different was I from her. And then the time came when I learned to disregard those words entirely, when it was nothing to me to crush many a creature of God's making, that because of my touch would never lift wing again. To pass the time seems to be one of the chief objects in life, and how to pass it a question on which the most ingenious inventions have been brought to bear. Whether the wickedness or the folly of the endeavor is the more deplorable is difficult to say. There are few phrases showing the perversity of the world more fully than this current expression, to pass the time. Time and life are inseparable. Men want to live, they consequently try to pass away the time, and yet it is time which yields the fullness of existence, be it in sorrow or in joy. To pass the time is considered to live. But at the end of time stands death, with hourglass and sickle waiting for the last grains to run out. Passing the time, then, may be tantamount to show self-murder. Men are anxious to pass it away as though it were a frightful monster, an enemy to life and its enjoyment, never thinking that the real enemy may be coming when time has vanished. If people would but understand that time is their most precious gift, a grace of heavenly fullness, and that all the treasures of the East can make up for a day wasted, for an hour lost. And if a single hour may be so rich in blessing, what then must time itself be worth, lying before us as a shoreless ocean? But the entire blessedness of the gift will come to the believing heart, only in the kingdom to come, where love rules, which made the time. In hell, where everything is seen in its own true light, the passing of time, or rather time past, assumes an awful significance, for truth and reality are upon us. It was time which, for us also, included the largeness of life, the manifold blessings shed abroad by the hand of God. Time is past now, and hope has fled. Ay, we ourselves are thrust out of it, never to enter again. Time for us has vanished, leaving existence behind. One of the great sources of amusement on earth for the beguiling of dull time is the theatre. Well, we too have a theatre, though time with us needs no more willing way. Old habit only is its raison d'etre. Women need something here to incite their fancy, men something to meet their craving, not to mention the question of food for fashionable conversation. There is no weather here to be talked about, so you must fall back upon the theatre. Acting with us is carried out in a magnificent if peculiar style, the like of which is not possible in the world, not even Paris, that theatre of theatres. Thus we are poor in dramatic works, for not many plays of poets' invention are so glaringly immoral that they are fit for hell, the greater number being vapid rather than wicked. No one cares for them here. But we have resources outdoing anything dreamt of by stage managers upon earth, for we nearly always act life. Real occurrences, that is, the actors being the very perpetrators of the things set in scene. That is to say, they commit over again on hell's stage the deeds of their earthly life. The theatre going public with us then do not feed upon imagination, but on flat reality, the child of illusion. Of stage managers there is no lack here, but theirs is no inviolable task. It needs their utmost exertion to undo one another in producing things horrible or piquant. For people here also desire to be tickled, blaze, though they be. So the harassed manager rushes about seeking for some spicy occurrence, some sensational wickedness, and having got it, he must look for the men and women who did it, though they be roaming in the farthermost places of hell. Find them he must, and having found them, there is no help for them. They must play their part. Let me give an example. There is a piece which made a great hit here lately, called The Jewel Robbery, a most satanic mixture of seduction, murder, and theft. A handsome woman, good-natured but silly, is intentionally led astray, as a means only, the object being a famous robbery, necessitating two frightful murders besides. A piece full of the most unwholesome effect, you see, and not invented by exaggerating playwright's fancy, but a reproduction, in all minutest details even, of horrible facts. The daily papers were full of it at the time. They are all here who were mixed up in it, continuing to play the part that brought them hither. You will understand from this that we could not act virtuous pieces even if the audience desired them, the needful actors not being procurable. Our theatre, nevertheless, plainly has the advantage, since real murderers, villains, and profligates are here to take their parts, and all the pieces given are scenes of actual life, are dramatis personae, then, though forced to play, do so with singular vivacity and truthfulness. If good people are required, by way of dupes and victims, we fall back upon hypocrites, who delight in their opportunity of showing forth their special talents, and indeed they manage their assumed character very cleverly. Moral laws, naturally, are quite out of the question. There is no eventual victory of goodness, nor need the triumph of wickedness be sustained. Play acting in hell is quite independent of rulers, either moral or dramatic, pieces simply being carried to the point they reached in life. The scenery is unrivaled. Illusion, of course, but the illusion is perfect. It is quite within our power to imagine any place, the surroundings of the original plot mere jugglery, but appearing most real. These scenes sometimes are wonderfully impressive, many a spectator, at the unexpected sight of well-known places, falling a prey to hopeless longing. Effective then as these representations are, they are a torment alike to actor and audience. In this we are also driven to own the one law paramount that makes inclination here a terrible compulsion, not leaving so much as a desire, even that it might be otherwise. End of letter 14. Read by Elijah Fisher.